Hello students, today we are going to do another essay by William Hazlitt on going on a journey. William Hazlitt was one of the eminent prose writers of the 19th century and holds an important place in the history of English essays. He was a nature lover and mixed with great poet like Coleridge and was influenced by English literature through these nature poets. This event is celebrated in the famous essay entitled My First Acquaintance with the Poet. After meeting Coleridge, he also met Wordsworth through him, and the impact of these two great poets was very profound on the essayist. His interest was quite varied, and therefore his essays are a curious mixture of humor and wisdom, wit and communication, sarcasm and sense. The charm of his essays is that he naturally inspires the reader to feel that life is beautiful. None can deny his unfailing culture and balanced outlook. The effortless ease is reflected through his writings, and he is unsurpassable for wealth of intellect and imagination. R.B. Stevenson commented, quote, "Though we are mighty fine fellows, we cannot write like Hazlitt." Unquote. One of the most brilliant writers of the Romantic age, Hazlitt has aptly been called the Byron of English prose. His virility and stamp. In his essays on going on a journey, Stevenson says, "Whosoever has not read Hazlitt's On Going on a Journey deserves to be punished." And he again pays a tribute by saying, "I would give my hand to write like Hazlitt." In this essay, we find a great romantic lover of solitude, of nature, of anything that touches the individual's sensibility. This essay is a translation of his personality, personal and full of gusto. Hazlitt remarks that on going on a journey is one of the pleasantest thing in the world, but alone. He is then never less alone than when alone. There is no sense in walking and talking. He would like to be a part of the nature or country around him, be assimilated in it. When he is in the country, he does not want to carry town with him. No friend near him to whisper solitude in sweat. The soul of the journey is liberty, perfect liberty to do as one likes. One is completely free from all cares, people, and things. Imagination can roam at will unshackled. The green fields, the blue sky are most delightful then, and a friend in a post chaise or in a philippi. When alone, he could run, laugh, sing, or leap and plunge into old memories. In company, one has to reply or say something, but in solitude, the undisturbed silence of the past is perfectly eloquent. There are times when one does not want to think upon anything but be in a state of repose. To muse once the beauty of a flower here or a crazy point in the distance are soul warming than anything else. In company, the friend will never realize his state of mind and may find him dull and unsocial. The best thing is either to be alone or give yourself up completely to your friends. Mr. Cobbett views is correct when he recommends that an Englishman should do one thing at a time, unlike the French who drink and eat at the same time. If even your company is a poetic soul, there will be comparison of notes. If you have to explain a point, all will be an interference in your soul's delight. Innumerable impressions are to be stored in mind for analysis later on. There are certain things which may be exclusively lovely to you, but your companion may just be indifferent to them. A person may think about anything, and these moments are precious. Coleridge could think as well as communicate. His talks were above music. Men like him had that fine madness in them which the first poets had. The writer needed time to collect himself and could not convert immediate expressions and lovely things into a didactic form or a Pindaric ode. So that is why he saved for later on. Certain subjects are unfit for discussion in the open. The best place is within. He refers to Lamb, Charles Lamb, who was one of the finest talkers. If one has to think in the country, the best topic will be what kind of dinner would be best after a long journey and when an appetite is sharpened. Stay at an inn in some remote village, away from all things, and then recollection of old things and experiences over goblets of tea. This is how Hazlitt describes his mood. To sit alone in the parlor and think what Sancho or Shamdi thought on such occasions. Cross the mind of Hazlitt. He does not find a friend but a stranger on such visits, as he would be a part of the scene. The scene will be spoiled by a friend who would break upon his delightful musings. At the inn, the feeling is that of lord of oneself. But in company, one is always among the things from which such a place is an escape, and only to be known as the gentleman in the parlor. The idea is to lose oneself completely in the background of the place. Some metaphysical problems were solved in the solitude of the inn. Hazlitt recalls how he enjoyed paintings, books, and the sight of a beautiful valley when he was alone. Such contemplation resulted in the feelings of liberty, genius, love, and virtue, which were otherwise lost in the common routine of life. To such places the poet would like to return. He remembers a tall rock from which he could recall the time gone, or the river being from which he would drink the water of life. Hazlitt is recalling the spirit of Wordsworth's poem Tintern Abbey. Imagination works in a shifting way. When we travel to new places, people transport us to old times. The new efface the old ones. This shows the limitation of imagination. We come across a beautiful scene and it enraptures us, but the moment we leave it, it is blotted out. Our concept of the world is limited by just what we see and nothing more. The rest is a name written in a map. Things near us are seen of the life size. Things at a distance are diminished to the size of understanding. The mind can recall only one idea at a time, and the rest are excluded. When Hazlitt goes to see the ruins, pictures no objection to company, where these can be talked about. There is joy in exchanging views. The whole consideration is where one should go. He visited Oxford and could feel to the learned air of the place. As regards a foreign journey, companion is a necessity. A love he would feel stifled, a limb torn off from the body. Some places are too big for a man's contemplation. In France, he was completely at home and found people very amiable. There was freedom of man, though he did not know the language, but the book of life was open before him. Such travels last on the mind as long as we are there, then they vanish. Dr. Johnson also remarked that not much was learned from such travels, as our mind habitually turns to objects of daily intercourse. We get lost to ourselves. So those who want to get rid of pains will do well to travel abroad. Hazlitt's essay is brilliant, and he has outlined both advantages as well as disadvantages of journey and travels. Thus, one may conclude after reading the essay that the style of the author is effectful and forceful. The essay is plain and simple, but interesting and amusing. The language is marked with great intellectual depth combined with vitality. These virtues are clearly reflected in all his writings. We find union of gravity, clarity, and generalistic gusto in all his works. Thank you.